and welcome to our latest Masterclass for advisors working in the later life lending market, brought to you and sponsored by More2life. My name's Stuart Wilson, I'm the Corporate Marketing Director at Key Group, and I'll be hosting today's presentation. Now we're here to talk about marketing, or more specifically, live marketing. That's the how, the why, and the what of running live client events. Those can take many forms, but given the socially distant world we now inhabit, we're going to be focusing on the growing popularity and the benefits of running online seminars or webinar marketing. Now, to help me do that, I've got two subject matter experts with me today who'll be debating and presenting on this subject. First, I've got Phil Calvert, who's an expert in marketing and financial services and one of our industry's leading authorities on online networking in the new economy. Welcome, Phil. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
And also joining us in this COVID-secure cabal, we have here Jess Ray, who's a presentation skills expert and somebody who's forged a career in something that most of us find utterly terrifying, I have to say, that's public speaking. So thank you also for joining us today, Jess.
My pleasure.
If I can start, before we get into the subject of webinar marketing, let's get the COVID elephant out of the corner of the room, so to speak. Phil, this whole pandemic has changed the nature of the world that we live in, and I guess in terms of the clients that you speak to on a day-to-day basis, it must have had a huge impact on the kind of marketing that they're doing, the way they're speaking to clients. Is that true to say?
Yeah, I mean, it is the case that everybody's been forced online, whether they're using Zoom or Skype or Teams, whatever it is. They've been doing more of it. And what's been really interesting is whilst there have been some financial advisors who are really nervous about doing that, more nervous about the tech perhaps than anything else, but what they've discovered is the clients absolutely love this kind of increased attention that they've been getting. And the great benefit that's come out of that is clients have been referring more people to their financial advisor. So they've been forced into a situation that's actually had some quite good benefits.
And Jez, if I could put the same question to you, how's the pandemic and the impacts of COVID, how's that affected the way that you've interacted with clients and the things that they've been coming to you for help with?
Well, Phil made a very valid point about enjoyment for the audience. And that's the key, isn't it? It's not about us, it's about the audience, about your audience. Enjoyment and engagement. The risk is we just carry on as we did before. We're all experienced in meeting people in the rooms. Now, I used to be a bank manager, so walking into a room and setting it up is something that's just in the DNA. And the risk is we'll just go on screen and just talk in the same way we used to. But what's the effect for the person on the other side of the screen? The first thing they see is you. But the first thing that walks into that room, that gets presented in that room, is your voice. In the old days, it would just be you in a smart suit, walking in with a nice big beaming smile, room neat and tidy, welcoming them in lovely atmosphere. But now they see you first, and the first thing that enters the room is the voice. It can either go well from there, or not provide them with the engagement and the enjoyment what they want. So in my view, there's now another layer of skills needed. On top of all those interview skills, those meeting skills that are in our DNA, that are germane to us, we now need that extra level to ensure that the client, as Phil says, enjoys and gets engagement out of that presentation, even if it's just a one-to-one meeting. There's so much more you can do, and surely you want to differentiate yourself from the also-rans who are not bothering.
And we're going to get a lot more into the detail of those great presentation skills and the way in which you can command an audience and set that scene as you've just described a little bit later on. Phil, I think the first thing I wanted to start with, though, is perhaps get into some of the what and the why of what we're talking about today, live marketing, webinar marketing. It's something I feel very passionate about. We're doing webinars for many, many years, but it's quite a unique skill set, isn't it? It's quite a unique sort of presentation style. So can you start to perhaps explain some of the what to begin with for those that are not familiar with what we're talking about today?
That's really interesting. And it goes back to what you just said about it being live. That's all important. And we used to see, and hopefully we'll see it again, great examples of that happening all of the time. I remember at a county show, I think it was the Guildford County Show one particular year, and you got the big avenue of goats and cows and sheep, but you'd also got like a craft tent as well. I remember on one occasion walking through one of these, and there was a guy there making rocking horses. And he was a big fella, big hair shirt, dungarees, and he was just kind of standing there. But next to him was a sort of half-finished rocking horse that he was making. So he was a real craftsman. And they'd scattered some wood shavings around on the floor. And every now and again, he just sort of rubbed this with a linseed oil rag or something like that. And the only person who was actually doing any work was his wife at the back, who was just taking cash and checks and credit cards off people because they kind of felt involved in what was going on. So although he made beautiful things, the fact that the people standing around him were kind of engaged in it and they felt part of it. And to me, that's live marketing at its absolute finest. And there are so many examples of that. So it's how do we translate that into an online environment as well? And I think that's the real key.
Yeah. So can you now sort of talk us through some of those sort of key tactics and things that you would start to talk to advisors about in terms of how they start going through the process of engaging on this?
Yeah, I think it has always been the case that seminars, live seminars, have always been for financial advisors around the world, wherever they are. Seminars have been the single most effective form of marketing because you have this engagement factor, you're interacting, engaging, that whole thing. So how do we bring that into the online environment as well? I think most of us have attended an online webinar, as they're kind of known. And I know quite a few financial advisors are put off by that particular concept because of the experience they've had in the past. You sign up for this thing, you're going to get a freebie, you get an hour of kind of average content, and you get an hour of sales pitch. And there are people who do webinars professionally. That's how they make their money. So I think a lot of financial advisors are thinking, that's what I've got to do. I've got to do a bit of a presentation. I might be a bit nervous about that. And then I don't want to really do any selling. So they feel uncomfortable with it. So how can we translate that into a professional world of professional financial advice? And there are two ways to do it. And first of all, you've got to really think about, well, what's my objective for this? What's my strategy anyway? Is this going to be a one-off that I'm going to do with clients? Or could I turn my current email newsletter into a regular online client event? Call it a webinar if you want, call it an online client event, whatever you want to do. So you need really, really clear objectives for what you're trying to achieve. And that could be something like raising my profile locally, adding value to existing clients, building relationships with professional connections, highlighting another service that I might offer as well. It can be a multitude of different things. So it's really important to have that and then to put it together. And we can go into how you put it together as we talk further.
And same point to you, Jez. How is this pandemic, the COVID crisis that we're in, how has that affected the way in which you've interacted with clients and the kind of feedback they're giving you in terms of how they're feeling about giving presentations now to members of the public?
Phil raised a key point about enjoyment and about engagement, because think of our experience as running meetings. We're all experienced in this room in running meetings. IFAs have been running meetings for years, and it's automatic, isn't it? You've got a checklist. You welcome into the room with a beaming smile. You make them feel comfortable. You've got the coffee set up. We know how to do it. We know how to do meetings. But now the first thing that they see on screen is your face. And the first thing that enters the room is your voice. It isn't you in your best clothes for that interview, it's your voice that goes into the room. So what can you do to make it more enjoyable for the client, more engaging for the client? So in my view, it's about that extra layer of skills above and beyond what we normally do for meetings and making clients feel comfortable and relaxed. Now let's create the engagement for them. Now let's make it an enjoyable experience so that they smile and go away remembering us as people they want to do business. It's built on that know, like and trust, and these skills of visual presenting can really help with that.
I totally agree with what you just said there, Jez, in terms of the engagement, the enjoyment. We're going to get a lot more into that a little bit later on when we hear more about your experience and skills in the art of presenting. But for now, Phil, if we can just get back to the basics. We're here to talk about webinar marketing, essentially. So can you talk a bit more about start with the what is it, and then we'll move through into the how and the why of doing it. What are we talking about here when we're talking about webinar marketing?
Well, essentially, it's taking the time-honoured model of putting on seminars and workshops and real client events and transferring them into the online world. Would you like to hear a bit more about that?
Yeah, please do, yeah.
Fantastic. Okay. Okay, so let's look at this in a bit more detail and really put some meat on the bones. So, webinar marketing for financial advisors, what's that all about? So let's put it into a little bit of context as to where I'm coming from and what I've learned about financial advisors and how they promote themselves over the years. Now, I first got into this industry in 1978, so I have met literally tens of thousands of financial advisors over that time. And as I went around my work, and I used to be an inspector, a broker consultant for various life companies, I used to talk to financial advisors, and the one question that came up time and time again was, how do I attract new clients? What's the best way to do it? Should I buy leads? And this one, it still comes up today. Over 40 years later, in online groups of financial advisors, how do I attract quality clients and how do I add value to my existing clients? This is the number one question time and time again. So before we just investigate that, let's just have a closer look at what's actually been going on in 2020 in terms of how financial advisors have been communicating and adding value to clients. The first thing I discovered fairly shortly after lockdown was that financial advisors fell into one of two camps. They either did nothing or they were really quick to communicate with clients. The market took a bit of a dive, and a lot of financial advisors just kind of did the right thing, was just to get on the phone or send an email to clients and saying, are you okay? We're here for you if you've got any questions. And what was really interesting, the feedback I've had from financial advisors is that most clients, whilst the market was going that way fast, they knew it was going that way. They knew their financial advisor could do nothing about it, but they welcomed the human interaction. And that was an extremely valuable thing. And the financial advisors who did that early communication, that quick communication, they will be remembered by their clients. The ones that didn't communicate with their clients, they will be forgotten. This was more about a human thing than anything else. I think it's something else that's really important to remember is, and it's been going on for years and years with financial advisors, as an industry, as a profession, we've not been great at the level of communication that we have with clients. An occasional email newsletter really doesn't add any value these days. So we've got to really think beyond what we're doing now and think, how can we really add value to clients, particularly in these difficult times. Something else I've noticed is that the more creative we can be in our communications, the better. We are quite limited now about how we can communicate with clients. The days where we could put on a seminar or a local client event or a client appreciation event, we can't do those anymore. We can't go to networking events anymore. So it's basically going to be online. So we need to think of different ways that we can use online. And Jez, you're going to talk about the skills that we need to actually communicate effectively with people. And I want to give you one example. Here's Elaine, she's a financial advisor, and one of the things she started doing, and she was really nervous about doing it initially, was doing video newsletters to clients. And she'd never done it before. She posted on LinkedIn recently, this is something she started to do. She said she was really nervous about doing it. She had no presentation skills training, but she thought, I've got to be different, I've got to stand out from the crowd, I've got to differentiate myself. So let's do video email newsletters. Something else she started doing now as well is a video out of office email as well, which I think is really creative. We've all send our out of office emails and they all say the same thing. Sorry, we're not here at the moment. Check out our website. Well, she's done that on video. As lockdown eased, she loves golf. She got out onto the golf course and she set up her mobile phone on the green and putted the ball straight towards the camera. She said, as you can see, I'm taking a few days out. Sorry, I can't take your call personally. And what was really interesting was the response from her clients. She had messages directly from clients saying, oh, it's lovely to see you in this new format. This is new. This is a great idea, a welcome surprise. So quite often these things that we think might be difficult, might be a bit technical, they are actually quite easy to do. We just got to put that toe in the water and make it happen. So what else has 2020 taught us? Well, it turns out that electronic financial advice works just fine. Over many, many years, financial advisors said, oh no, it can't be done. There's no way that we can give online financial advice, but we've been forced to do this. Turns out clients love it. And many clients love it so much. They love the convenience of it as well. It's really easy to do. Everybody's learned how to use Zoom. Everyone's learning how to use Skype or Teams. And so it's becoming very much the norm now. And clients are experiencing financial advisors' expertise and services in new ways. And because they're experiencing it in new ways, they'll make those recommendations and referrals to their friends and so on and so forth. So it's worth trying out new ideas. Just give it a go, practice on some of your friends and see where that goes. What else has 2020 taught us? Well, we've got to be a bit more strategic about how we use this online stuff. The idea that we could just put out a couple of tweets and hope that someone might get in touch, forget it, it's not going to work. A couple of videos on YouTube. We've got to get into this and get much more strategic about it. And something else that's really, really important is to remember that there is a difference between social networking and social media. You know, back in the day, before Twitter, before Facebook, perhaps the early days of LinkedIn, the words social media weren't really known, certainly amongst the financial advice community, but it was known as social networking. And there's a clue in the title. Social media, for the most part, is about broadcasting noise. Social networking is interacting, engaging with human beings at a human level over a cup of coffee. So this really, when you get this into your head, you begin to realize that communication with human beings, yes, using social media platforms, is what it's all about. It's not just about chucking noise out there in the hope that someone will notice you. I noticed a few other financial advisors, once they started getting into doing online advice, online events, short, simple little webinars, educational pieces, they noticed, they found for the very first time that they put on their website, I'm now offering this online service. And one lady financial advisor told me that she added to her LinkedIn profile just one extra line that said, now offering online financial advice. Join us for our weekly online client event. She said within about 24 hours of putting that one line on her LinkedIn profile, she picked up 3 or 4 new clients who didn't know that she actually did this. So really simple, don't assume that your clients know you offer online services. Actually go out of your way and tell them.
And Phil, could I just ask a question there actually? You just said a couple of very interesting things about this assumption. Do you feel that this is something actually that we as an industry are projecting onto clients, that they won't want this kind of interaction, they won't want to do things online? Or are advisors actually finding that some clients are a bit reticent about this technology? What do you think is the main barrier here to more advisors getting involved in doing more and more online?
Yes, that's a really good question. I think the vast majority of financial advisors, and I know that's a broad brush statement, but the vast majority, that we've taken this assumption that financial advice can only ever be done between consenting adults, either in the client's home or in our offices, and that there are actually other ways to do it. Yes, there are still many financial advisors say, no, it can only ever be done face to face. Well, I would question that one, and what's been interesting, what I've noticed, is that where financial advisors have said to their clients, look, we can do this online, we can do this by Skype, FaceTime, if you like, they go, oh, fantastic, because there are people out there who really don't want to go and see a financial advisor. They can think of nothing worse, but they know they need the help and they need the expertise. But when they discover, often for the first time, that this can be done online at their convenience, happy days, everybody wins. So the silver lining for many financial advisors is that more clients are stepping forward and more referrals are being made because they're offering this other service. Okay, so what else? What about wider marketing? I think we've got to start thinking again, or thinking in more detail about how we actually communicate our value and expertise to clients. Now, a lot of marketing people would have you believe that this is what it's all about, that we've got to constantly be pushing content out onto the internet. We've got to have a YouTube channel, we've got to have a podcast, we've got to have our own group on Facebook. This is great if your target clients inhabit this world out there. And to be quite frank, this is just unsustainable over the long term. When it comes down to it, if we know our clients, and we should know our clients, we will know where they hang out online. Equally, we will know their sort of socio-economic group. We will know their demographics. And if we take the trouble to actually ask our clients, how would you like to be communicated? Then marketing becomes so much simpler. But we are where we are and we need to get some focus. Now, I'm a collector of real old school marketing. I just love old fashioned marketing. And if we go back to 2002, this is how Bic razors were promoting Bic razors. And this was a legendary marketing campaign at the time where they created a giant billboard in the middle of a field by the side of a road and a giant razor, and as you can see, the razor has cut the grass. Now, this was great, went down in sort of marketing folklore in terms of its creativity. One problem though, if you didn't see this, you didn't know it existed. If you didn't have to drive past this, you didn't know it existed. And you wouldn't have known it existed unless you read the right marketing magazines. So I love this creativity, but it needed to be, if we were doing it again today, we would bring it up to date today, and we'd put something like this. We'd put social media logos on there, and Bic would be encouraging us to do their marketing for them. And let me show you another one. A few years ago, again back in 2002, my wife and I sold our house. We were moving house, and we did a tour of the local estate agents, and they all promised us amazing service. And one thing I did notice is they all said the same thing. They all looked the same. Their offices all looked the same. And it was really difficult to differentiate between one estate agent and another. But we needed to choose. But the following day, after we'd been around the local estate agents, a letter arrived in the post. And I opened it. I was really quite interested what might be inside. And inside was a piece of red carpet. That's it, a piece of red carpet. But it was what was written on the back that really interested me. And it says, all our clients receive the same treatment, red carpet treatment. And I thought, how simple is that as a great piece of marketing? Simple, very, very effective, and certainly got my attention. So where I'm going with this is, at the end of the day, marketing can be remarkably simple when we apply just a little bit of creativity. And any financial advisor could use a simple idea like that. Today we can bring marketing kicking and screaming up today, and I love this piece of creativity that I saw only a couple of days ago. An advert for braces with the person wearing a mask over their face as well. So let's look at a little bit closer, get a bit more detail now. And I want to talk to you about the 3 most effective forms of marketing for financial advisors. The most popular form of marketing for financial advisors is referrals, and those financial advisors who are starting to do online events are reporting that they are getting more referrals coming through, and I think that's so important. So referrals, very, very effective, although I would add one caveat to that I think we're getting a bit over-reliant on referrals these days, to be quite honest, because if you were to recommend a financial advisor to me, it doesn't necessarily mean that the next day I'm going to go and phone them up. Before I do that, I'm going to literally go on Google, check them out. What do they look like? Does their website look nice? I look for simple things. Do they look good? Do they look trustworthy? And then I'm going to find in my Google search results, I'm going to find other financial advisors. So I might get distracted. I might not actually take up your recommendation. So referrals are great, but with a word of caution. Now, potentially the most effective form of marketing and lead generation for financial advisors is their website. But the overwhelming majority of financial advisors' websites are simply ineffective. Yes, you are getting visitors to your website, but no, for the most part, you are not converting them into proper inquiries. And I'm just going to pick that up later on as to simple tweaks that you could do. But your website is already getting visitors. You just don't know that, and you're not converting them. So we need to think about that one. And number 3, well, as I mentioned earlier, the single most effective form of lead generation for financial advisors is seminars. Always has been, always will be, whether it's done online or in person. Of course, right now, we can't do them in person, but if you were thinking about doing some seminars for next year, maybe you want to start planning them right now, because it's hard work. So I'm going to mention one other, though, that is incredibly powerful as a lead generation tool, and that is LinkedIn, another online environment. But we're not here to talk about LinkedIn. So one more piece of marketing greatness that I've spotted and how we can use it to engage with clients. Now, a couple of months ago, my mother sent me this in the post. And it is a little red book from Gordon's Gin. Tanqueray Gordon, to be precise. And during lockdown, I thought, well, this is absolutely fascinating. She said, She said, this was your dad's. He had it in his bedside drawer for the entire time that they were married. So decades and decades. She said she never saw him open it. She doesn't know where he got it from, but he treasured it, and she's passed it on to me. Now, being a lover of a gin and tonic, I was delighted with this, and I got straight on to the Diageo archivists who own Gordon's now, and I said, can you tell me anything about this? And I got a wonderful email back from the archivist saying, wow, we haven't seen one of those for a while. He said, what you've got there is a marketing piece from Tanqueray Gordon's. It is 100 years old. Now, let me show you inside this little book as well. They created this as a tool to attract new people to buy Gordon's gin. But it was also doubling up as a tool to add value to existing lovers of Gordon gin. So it's an educational piece first and foremost. But it was, they absolutely were so proud of this as a marketing tool when it came out. So the idea was to attract new customers, but at the same time to add value to existing customers. And I'm going to pursue that in a minute. Whatever type of marketing you do, it takes you onto your value ladder, the process which guides customers into your world. And by value ladder, what do I mean? If we look at the value ladder for a dentist, typically a lot of dentists will offer free teeth cleaning, free teeth whitening, just to get you in the building, yeah? And they'll get nice video testimonials, and they can use those. And once you get to know, you get to like, you get to trust you, it's much more likely that you're going to go on and pay for the real pricey stuff like cosmetic dentistry. The value ladder for a chiropractor, broadly similar. Free stuff to get you in the building, get you used to them. But what they really want you to do is to get to the point where you like them enough that you're going to pay a monthly subscription to a wellness retreat. Value ladder for a gym, well, the value ladder for a gym starts on January the 1st every single year. They offer you freebies, they get you in, get you to like the place, because that makes it much more likely that you will pay for higher value services. In terms of my value ladder for financial advisors, it looks a bit like this. To get you into my world, I will go free stuff, a free Facebook group, a free ebook, a scorecard, I'll tell you about scorecards later, a webinar, a book, I've got some of my books, and various things that we go up. Now, the things in green on that list are free. The things in blue are either free or I might charge for them. The things in black I will always charge for, and the things in red are reassuringly very expensive. So what about the value ladder for a financial advisor? Typically, most financial advisors don't actually have a value ladder. Sometimes it's quite a transactional thing. Maybe somebody wants a mortgage, we go through the process, we arrange the mortgage, everybody's happy. Maybe you're doing a bit of financial planning. You know, we're expecting people to come into our world having never met us before and to pay for, buy our highest value service straight away. Yet there are various things that a financial advisor could actually offer on that client's journey, varying from a free tips book, a free e-guide, but also webinars. Webinars are absolutely fantastic tools on a financial advisor's value ladder. They can be free, you could do a one-off one, they could be every week, every month, whatever suits you. But what you could also do is provide a chargeable webinar as well, thus giving you as a financial advisor an additional income stream. Some financial advisors watching this, they may know Martin Bamford. He's quite well known in the financial advice world, and he's written 3 books. So here are his 3 books. And whilst he makes a bit of money out of these are very much part of his value ladder. He says quite a lot of clients, when they first come to him, say, oh, Martin, I bought your book 10 years ago, and I've only just got around to getting in touch with you. But what we're doing here is we're taking elements of our expertise and our experience and turning them into products and services that will help people come into our world, and webinars are one of those. Catherine Morgan, she's a rising star in the financial advice world, and she has a very clear value ladder. She offers these 5-day challenges on Facebook just to get you into her world, so that makes it much more likely that you'll want to work with her on a longer term basis. Not many of you will know Pete Matthew. Pete has his own YouTube channel. He's been doing it for over 10 years now, and that's evolved into what's now known as the Meaningful Money podcast. He has millions of people downloading his podcast, millions and millions. And he says to me, it is a lead generating monster. I can pick and choose the clients I want to work with because I am sharing my value freely through a podcast, through a YouTube channel, and people really pick up on that. So his podcast is very much part of Pete's value ladder. And he's also got ebooks as well. He's got an online community as well, a Facebook group, which is basically full of fans talking about money. He's got a book as well, and he's got some online courses as well. So that's very much what a value ladder is all about, and he demonstrates different tools that he uses. Now, it strikes me that more and more financial advisors could be doing this. We are only limited by our own imaginations as to how we use our expertise and experience. And I know you guys, meeting financial advisors around the UK, there's a lot of people with some great ideas, great skills, but they're more often than not actually using that as well as they could be. Great skills that they could be using. And the problem with most financial advisor marketing, it's just random, unpredictable results, unscalable, pretty ineffective, and that just creates stress. And that's why the number one topic of conversation amongst financial advisors is still, how do I generate new leads? Pretty stressful. So wouldn't it be better if we could make it less random, much more effective, and get predictable results that give us confidence to pick and choose the clients that we really want to work with? Now, I've done some research along with a guy called Michael Kitces in the States as to what type of marketing is actually effective for financial advisors. Now, for top performing advisors or advisors that have been around for a while, what you see here is the list that actually works time and time again. Yes, referrals at the top of the list. Book writing, seminars, webinars, client events, web listings, LinkedIn, and so on and so forth. Now, for financial advisors that are either new or just getting started, it's a slightly different list. But again, referrals, introducers, and look at number 5 there, seminars, webinars, and client events. The problem with seminars and webinars in the minds of most financial advisors is this is going to be hard work, isn't it? How do I get bums on seats? How do I get people to turn up for the Zoom presentation? Trust me when I tell you that's just a process. I'm going to explore some of this as we go forward. So clearly, whether you're an experienced advisor, things are going well, or whether you're fairly new to the game, seminars and webinars are where the real action is. Now, I've put together a kind of chart here that looks at the characteristics of these different types of marketing. In an ideal world, wouldn't it be great if we could get marketing that was low cost, simple, got predictable results, was scalable, and seriously effective? There are a few things that tick those boxes. In an ideal world, we want them to be in the low cost, the predictable, and the effective box. Now, if we actually put these up, and you might want to pause the video at this point just to have a look at this, but you'll see that not all of them tick every single one of those boxes. Some are scalable, but they're pretty expensive. Some are ineffective, but they're not particularly low cost. So it's worth looking at. So the things that we're really looking at are things that are low cost, predictable, and effective. And if you look at that bottom line there, the only one that ticks all the boxes is webinars. What have we got in common? What do you think we've got in common between seminars, books, and webinars? It is that they are educational. Just like my little red book from Tanqueray Gordon, it educates whilst it attracts new clients. So in the next section, I'm going to take a slightly deeper dive and we're going to look at why webinars are just so effective as a marketing tool that is simple, low cost, effective, gets predictable results as well.
Phil, it's fascinating what you just said there in terms of the ways in which webinars add to this, what you've described as this value ladder, and how that's, on both sides of the pond. In America, that's been identified as being so important, and in this country as well. So what are the key benefits of running webinars then? How does all of this work?
Well, what's amazing is there's just so many benefits for financial advisors when it comes to putting on webinars. So let's have a look at some of those. And I kind of put this list together. When I was putting this presentation together, I thought, let's put a list together. And it is amazing how many benefits there are that makes webinar marketing stand head and shoulders above everything else. If you were to commit to doing webinar marketing, for example, Depending on your objectives or why you're trying to do this, you can get away with doing all your marketing in 1 hour a quarter, or half an hour a week, or 1 hour a month. You decide how often you want to do this. I would strongly recommend that you do it on a consistent basis, because you will find that when you start doing this, your clients will absolutely love this. They will love this format because it is educational. So it takes you no time at all to do your marketing. It's cheap. I mean, we don't have to go anywhere. We don't have to hire a hotel. We don't have to travel anywhere. We don't have to pay for lunch. It is one to many, which is a very powerful form of marketing. It is incredibly scalable. So for example, you could do a live one, record it, and then just have it going over and over again on your website, and you can do more and more of them. By definition, the right attendees will sign up for this. They are getting value from an expert, that's you. You can also do a panel version as well, so where you build relationships with other experts. Maybe you want to interview people. The fact that you're even doing it at all establishes your area of expertise. I mean, if you write an article, it suggests you have expertise. If you write a book, it suggests you've got a great deal of expertise. If you do a seminar, it suggests you have expertise. And if you put on a webinar, all of those apply as well. It builds trust. It's really, really engaging. It takes practice to get the presentation skills right to make it as engaging, and Jez is going to talk about that later on. It enhances your brand value. It generally is a source of fantastic leads as well, builds really long-term relationships, and there is a natural next step for your webinar attendees to take afterwards. There are lots of stats, and I'm not going to bore you with statistics, but the simple fact of the matter is that marketers and people who do webinars tell you this works. And there are many, many businesses around the world that base their entire marketing and lead generation activities around webinars. Let me give you a real example. Now, this is Jeff from the United States, and he was one of those financial advisors that had always used a range of different types of marketing. Something would work once for a month, and something else he'd use. He'd try a variety of different things until somebody convinced him that he needed to be putting on webinars. He did his first one, 23rd of June last year. 377 people registered, which is huge. I mean, one thing I'm going to say in the next step, where we're talking about getting people to actually turn up, is start small. You don't need those kind of numbers. 76 people turn up, 3 people scheduled a call during the webinar, 3 more scheduled within 2 days, and you can see from those numbers there that the clients he attracted were pretty impressive as well. So Jeff was very much sold on this, and after he got over his initial nerves of what do I talk about, how do I get bums on seats, and are my presentation skills up to it enough, he was absolutely sold on this whole thing. So what are the different types of webinar models that are out there, and which ones actually work for financial advisors? Now, we're probably all familiar with, and you're very familiar with, the traditional webinar model, where you sign up, and you sign up because also there's going to be a bit of a freebie at the end of it, and you get somebody who will do an hour worth of kind of average to fairly good content, and then there's an hour of sales pitch afterwards. Now, I think a lot of financial advisors still think that is the webinar model that they need to follow. Financial advisors, for the most part, really are not salespeople in that sense. They're not going to do a presentation and then a pitch. So that's the model which most people are familiar with, but that's the one which financial advisors really don't want to go anywhere near. Now, you can see how it works. There are no cameras. You have medium to a large group of people. It's just a simple PowerPoint presentation, screen share of information, free to attend. You can watch it live and you can watch it again later. A variation on that theme is perhaps using an interactive whiteboard. Maybe having a big screen next to you which you can actually write on, or something like that. But instead of a 50-50 split of content and sales, you have 85% high content and then a very professional offer. And by professional offer, as far as a financial advisor is concerned, it would be something along the lines of, if you would like to work with us, please talk to us. It's as simple as that. But there's a right and a wrong way to do that, and I'll talk to that a little bit later on. Usually that kind of model is done live and there is no recording. And in your marketing you say there will be no recording, and that actually attracts more people because they don't want to miss out. Another type of model which is becoming quite popular is a small to large group, no cameras on Zoom or anything like that. It's just, again, a straight screen share of information, The whole thing is content. A bit like what we're doing here today. It's free to attend and it's live and recorded, and another version of that as well, small to large group, no cameras, live and recorded as well. But you could charge people to attend. So if you think again in terms of the value ladder, a financial advisor could use a webinar to attract new clients and to add value to existing clients, but further up, for a certain group of clients who are willing to pay, they will pay for the webinar as well. So that's another variation as well. But the one that that will work for most financial advisors is this really, really simple one here. There is another type of model as well, which is becoming increasingly popular, known as a kind of boardroom briefing. Now, these are a little bit more upmarket. Smaller number of people attend, no more than 10 people maximum. It is a straight information share. There is no upsell as well. So it's a bit more upmarket. So maybe you'll have some clients who want to go deeper on a particular area of expertise that you have, and that will be absolutely ideal for them as well. A financial advisor might want to put on one of those every single quarter. They need to be no longer than 45 minutes, something like that. And there's another version of that as well, where you have a small group of people, but it becomes very interactive as well. So everyone will have their cameras on, and it is literally like sitting around a boardroom table, and we can interact, we can engage, you can ask questions, I can throw ideas out, get your feedback. We could do exercises as well, that kind of thing. So those are the kind of models, and both of those will work for financial advisors as well. One final model, the interview one, where you, the financial advisor, will literally interview a local business person, a professional introducer, one of your business friends, or even a client for that matter as well. And they are pretty engaging as well. Now, we want to make sure this succeeds. And I cannot stress this one up, just how important this particular point is. You must have an objective for your webinar. Just as if you guys were putting on a seminar, you've got to have an objective. If you want, one of the single biggest reasons why financial advisors' seminars don't get bums on seats is because they haven't got a plan, they haven't got a clear objective. And your objective could be one of a number of things. You want to do more communication, you want to strengthen relationships, highlight your expertise, add value, attract more clients, but you must write one down. You also need to have another objective, and that's an objective for your attendees. You've got to decide in advance what is it that you want them to do or to remember or to act on or even purchase as a result of attending your webinar. So really important that you have those two objectives. How long is this going to take? If you were thinking, right, okay, I buy into this, Phil, I'm going to put my first webinar, put your date in the diary 3 months from now. Because you're going to spend the first month messing around, jotting down ideas, you've got a business to run in the meantime. Don't just think, right, I'm going to put on a webinar next week. Well, you can do that after you've been doing this for quite a long time. So give yourself a good 3 months to do this as well. Lots of people ask me, what's the best day to do this? The general opinion is that Wednesdays between 11 and 2 are the best times to do those. Definitely not on a Monday, definitely not on a Friday. If you want to do longer events, perhaps half a day, full day, then Saturdays work quite well. But for most financial advisors, middle of the day on a Wednesday works perfectly fine. Also, when you think about how do we plan this, there are various considerations that you need to get right. So how often? I think for most financial advisors, if you could replace your email newsletter, which for most advisors goes out once a month, a once a month webinar would work really well. But if you really want to up your game on this, and if you plan it well enough, there's no reason why you couldn't do one every single week. Start small, just get 3 or 4 people on just to start with, just to do proof of concept. Think about your content. Do you want to script it? Do you want to use PowerPoint, something like that? Which of the webinar models I've just described do you think are going to work well? What platform you're going to use? And you can see from this slide here, the typical sort of webinar platforms that are available. I mean, there's loads and loads of them, but if you as a financial advisor, you're already used to using Zoom, then use Zoom. Zoom's got its own webinar functionality. You've got to pay 30 quid for a month's use of a webinar platform, but that means you can then do a larger number of people. So it doesn't really matter what the platform is that you use, but you just give this a go, yeah?
And Phil, I just want, sorry to interrupt you there, but I think you just touched on quite an important point there, because I think one of the things that advisors watching this might worry about is going back to that number, you mentioned the guy in America had 300 odd people register. I mean, I must admit, somebody who's run lots of webinars, that's a very good number of people to get registered for a webinar, and typically you might get 40 or 50% of those turning up if you're doing well. But the beauty of webinars compared to seminars, isn't it, that it doesn't matter if only one person turns up, because you can talk as if there's 100 people there, 1,000 people, and you still get the same impact. Whereas somebody, one man and his dog turning up to a seminar, it doesn't look so good. So I don't think people should worry about the number, should they? Going back to your previous point, it's all about just that great content and delivering it with confidence every time.
Absolutely. This is about adding value, and in the process of adding value, people are going to warm to that, they're going to warm to you, and they're going to tell their friends. So you get the referral as well, which is even better. So the number thing's really, really important. Yeah, his example is an extreme example. He used Facebook ads to get a lot of people on board, but that's fine. And I'm coming on to say one of the most important things is just start small. Do proof of concept and just start with your existing clients and put something on as a value add thing to your existing clients. And what you will be amazed by is the number of existing clients who get in touch with you after the event, say, I don't think I've ever brought this up before with you, but So they will come forward, they will also make more referrals, and just start really small. And as you correctly say, if you get one person, awesome, but you could use that recording over and over and over again. You're going to need to do some marketing as well, so you're going to need to think about a page on your website, a landing page, a thank you page when people register. You've got to think about what are the next steps. I'm going to come on to that in the next section as well. You're going to think about how could I reuse this once I've got a recording. And if you want to be really fancy, you can brand it up as well. So final thing to think about in this particular section is how do we get the content? What are we going to talk about? Really interesting one this. So one thing I discovered, I've been doing webinars for quite a long time now, and I've got kind of a list of things that I think financial advisors would like to hear about in a webinar. But somebody said to me years ago, well, why don't you actually ask financial advisors, what would you like to hear about in a webinar? And when I reach out and ask financial advisors and say, I think I'm doing one on this topic, or this topic, or this topic, which one would you like? They usually go, none of those. Could you do something on this topic? So actually ask your clients, what would they like to hear content about as well? Another little tip is try and think back to every question that a client has ever asked you. And here's the thing, from today, every question that a client ever asks you, write it down in a little book, because that will give you potential content for a webinar. And finally, there's a great website called answerthepublic.com. And what answerthepublic.com does, it kind of curates every question around a particular topic that's asked on a search engine. So if you go on to Answer the Public and type in, say, pensions or mortgages or equity release, Answer the Public will show you every question that's ever asked on a search engine. And there are thousands and thousands, and that just gives you great ideas for content for webinars. Okay, that's it for this section.
Phil, what you just said there, again, really fascinating. Such a simple idea like writing down questions that clients ask you to prompt you for content. I think that's a great idea. So we've got a content. We've sold on the idea of running these webinars, adding to our value ladder as you've described. And I suppose almost contrary to what I said just a moment ago, but we don't want to worry too much about the number, but we still want a number there. So it's now down to the promotion of this event, isn't it, and getting those bums on those virtual seats. So how does an advisor go about starting down that road?
Yeah, great, and so important. You say we don't want 377 people, and we want a few more than one. So let's have a look at some of the techniques that will actually get some people watching this. So who do we target? That's a good one. And this will largely come down to your objectives for the event. Remember, we talked about why are we doing this? What is it we want to achieve? So we've got to go back to our objectives. For example, are we looking to attract more clients? Are we just looking to do this as an added value thing? Are we looking to promote all sorts of other services? Every financial advisor will have a different objective. Now, the sources that you will have are actually huge. There are so many different ways that you could attract people to come along to your webinar or to promote to. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these, but I'm just going to talk about really the one at the top of the list, your existing clients. let's start with them, okay? Because they're the ones that already know you, they're the ones that already like and trust you. And if you're coming along now and saying, look, I'm going to give you even more value, I give you something on an educational basis, on a regular basis, they're more than likely going to sign up. They're going to sign up, much more likely that they'll sign up than somebody who doesn't yet know you. So I would always start small and start with your existing clients. Go for them. So how do we tell people that we're putting on a seminar, a webinar? Again, there are so many different ways that you can do it. For most financial advisors, good old-fashioned email is going to be the way that you do that. We haven't got time today to go into the actual wordings as to what we put on them, but remember they already have a relationship with you, so they're much more likely to actually open your email and respond to it. But there's a variety of other things that you can do. We mentioned video email right at the very start today. So perhaps do a short, simple little video, email it out to them. That will really stand out amongst all the other emails in their inbox as well. But you can do all sorts of other things. You can promote it on your website, you can get on the phone, you can send letters, postcards, build local relationships, all sorts of different ways of doing that. There are a variety of different platforms that you could use as well. So you might as well make the most of the free tools that are available. So Facebook has got its own events platform, LinkedIn has got its own events platform as well, and you can use tools like Eventbrite. So that's if you want to go beyond your immediate client base as well. Then you could have a registration page. That's the bit where people get the information on a web page and they sign up. And there are various things that are proven to work on a registration page. Fundamentally, you've got to know who you are promoting this to. And if you know who you're promoting this to, you will know what they're worried about, what they're scared about, what their concerns are, what their hopes are for the future. So your promotional piece, your promotional wording needs to actually speak to them as well, speaks to that. You've got to actually talk a bit about yourself. Why are you the person to be doing this presentation today? People love to hear about you. Do you know one of the single biggest reasons, guys, why people don't get bums on seats at seminars is because their promotional marketing rarely talks about themselves, the speaker. They say, you're going to get this, it's going to be in this nice hotel, and you're going to get free lunch. And they forget to talk about themselves, and other human beings like to buy into you. So on your promotional page, you want to talk about you. Why did you become a financial advisor? How did you become the person you are? Short, simple little stories are what gets people's attention as well. You want a simple description of how they're going to benefit when they turn up for the thing. There's got to be a call to action. Sign here, register here, click here. Use those kind of words. Be bold, okay? And in an ideal world, if you could do all that in a video on your registration page, even better. So they can see the whites of your eyes. Another little trick, a little tip that actually works really, really well on a registration page is to have a little quiz or a little survey. Now that doesn't mean to be anything particularly in depth. It can be literally as simple as a question that says, how did you hear about us? LinkedIn, email, telephone, whatever. What you're trying to do is to get people to literally engage at a physical level with your webpage. And all the stats show that if you can get people to actually click on something or tap on something while they're reading your promotional page, they are much more likely to sign up. Testimonials are great as well. Try and get some testimonials. If you've not done a webinar before, that doesn't matter. Just get a testimonial from an existing client. But there are testimonials and there are testimonials. I saw this. This is a real testimonial I saw on one financial advisor's website for a seminar they were putting on. And this was the testimonial. The venue for Jones & Co.'s seminar was amazing. What a location, and the lunch was superb. Now, on the surface, that sounds like a great testimonial. It really isn't. It says nothing about what they learned at the event. Something like this, a genuine cause and event type testimonial, is what really works. As a result, working with Jones & Co., I now feel completely confident about my income in retirement. That is a testimonial. As a result of working with Jones & Co., my net worth has quadrupled. Now, if you can get one of those, great. But that's the kind of testimonial that is really effective on a webinar promotional page. You also want to include what's known as a value stack, and this is where it sounds like it's getting a bit salesy, but it's actually a very simple and it's a psychological technique that you can use which attracts people to sign up. Now, this is what I call a value stack. You promote the webinar, but then you also tell them about other things that they will get as a when they turn up, and then you put a value on that. So in this particular case, you get a ticket to the webinar, value £97, you get a video recording, value, and we state the value. And then we add up all the value and we come up with a really big number. Now, most financial advisors' webinars will be free, but you still want to try and express what the thing is actually worth in pounds, shillings, and pence as well. So, the overview for the event itself. So, we've chosen our platform, we're going to use Zoom, we've got to think about how long it's going to be. Most financial advisors, 90 minutes is about as long as you'll ever want to go. 40 to 45 minutes is much, much better. You need to get on with it as well. Once you've started, none of this beating around the bush, theoretical fluff stuff, get on with it because people's attention spans are fairly short. You do want to introduce yourself again, just as you did on the registration page. You want to do it there. Don't take too long, but just so people can get a sense of who you are, so they can buy into you before they listen to your message. The title of your event needs to be something very, very explicit. So if I'm putting on a webinar on how to put on webinars, this is the sort of title that I would have. How my financial advisor clients around the world are using webinars to predictably generate quality inbound new client inquiries. So there's no vagueness there about what the content of the webinar is going to be. So the actual agenda ought to follow a particular process as well. So you welcome people once they've got on there. You do a simple tech check and literally ask people, can everybody hear me? Now that's a good thing to do anyway, but again, from a psychological point of view, what we're getting is people to actually engage with you right from the start. We're getting people nodding, saying yes. Invite people to ask questions. Ask them to stay to the end. Don't assume that they will. Actually ask them to do that. Maybe offer them something. For when you stay to the end, we'll give you a freebie, something like that. Even though they've turned up, then say who this is for. Then talk about you, yourself, your journey, who you became, who you are today. Then start with a sort of broad explanation of what's going on in the market, whether it's the equity release market, whether it's the pensions market. Get into that, just broad outline of the market. Then what's called breakdown belief patterns. Now, equity release is a great example in terms of, because a lot of people, they think, okay, I've heard of this equity release thing, but I've not heard good things about it. So, and you already know what those objections are going to be. So they've got these preconceived beliefs. So as part of your presentation, you need to answer those, well, they're objections, aren't they, for want of a better word. So answer their objections within your presentation, okay? Put in some common myths as well, but don't make everything too rosy. If something isn't right for one type of client, then say so. So you say equity release could be great for these people in this bracket, but maybe not so good for people in this bracket. So that comes over to people that you are genuine and that you are sincere and you're not trying to literally hoodwink everybody. A couple of case studies are absolutely great because that is the proof and makes it much more likely that people will want to talk to you later. Include your freebie at the end and then invite people to take a consultation call. And this is almost the key bit. This is one of the reasons why we're doing this. The post-webinar actions are all important. So we've got to think, what do we want people to do? Okay, we want them to book a call, and that could be done through a scheduling tool like Calendly. But you need to manage and set expectations because you want to get the right clients, the clients you actually want. You want them talking to you. So you actually say in your webinar, here's what will happen when we talk, and here's what will not happen. Like I'm not going to do a sales pitch on you, that sort of thing. And here's what I will need from you. So we're already filtering some people, and we're saying to people, we're really only interested in the serious people here. And you can even go so far as to almost give an implied agreement to people. And here's one I've seen financial advisors using at the end of their webinars, where you say, look, if you want to talk to us, we want you to agree that you understand that the primary reason for the meeting with you is to find out if there's a fit between us, to confirm that if we agree to working together is a good idea, I'm ready to get started sooner or whenever. And I'm also aware that I'm going to get charged a fee. The consultation will be free, but somewhere I've got to pay for this. So that will get rid of quite a few people, but it shows real professionalism as part of your webinar. So many webinars, people just do their presentation, sit back and go, great, hope you enjoyed it, thanks very much. What we actually want people to do is take some action, but we want the right people to take some action. One of the things you could do is say to people, if you've enjoyed this, please tell a friend. We will be doing this again next week, next month, next quarter. Please invite someone to come along. Really, really powerful. Now, I just want to finish up with a couple of tools that you may not have heard of before, which are incredibly powerful as a way to attract people to your webinar, but also that there are tools that you can use in your business along the way. And one of them is called scorecard marketing. You remember I said on your registration page, it's great to have a quiz. Well, scorecard marketing is like that. It is a quiz that you have on your website, but it generates leads. People answer questions, simple yes, no questions. I've got one, a quiz, when I do on webinars on how to use LinkedIn, I've got one where I ask questions about how people use LinkedIn. And this is incredibly powerful at generating leads for your business and leads for your webinar. You create your scorecard, you stick it on your website or a registration page. People love filling in quizzes online as well. You get the answers to their quiz and you get their email address as well. So for example, so you can see one in practice, this is my LinkedIn health check, I call it, and I use this to get people to come along to my webinars as well. And I ask questions to financial advisors and other people. How do you use LinkedIn? Do you do this? Do you do this? Do you do this? And they get a score. And they ask simple questions like, do you have a profile photo? Do you have a strategy? And they go, yes, no, maybe, that kind of stuff. And they get a score at the end. Now they find that really high value. And I'm using that as part of my value ladder as well. But I'm getting phenomenal numbers of these. I give them a gift at the end. I say, when you complete your scorecard, you'll get a free copy of my book, something like that as well. Here's a branding expert who does a scorecard as well. Here's a financial advisor that's using a scorecard as well, another financial advisor as well. Simple questions that get people really interested, really engaged, and they want to turn up to your webinar. Now, I did a webinar the other day, and I told them about my scorecard at the end of my webinar, and I said, go take my scorecard. I had 97 leads 10 minutes after I finished my webinar, and I can pick and choose the ones that I want to work with. Amazing. Finally, another tool which traditionally has only been available to large corporate organizations, live chat on your website. Usually very expensive. It's normally outside the budget of most smaller businesses, particularly small financial advice firms as well. But there is finally an affordable live chat service in the UK called Melu, M-E-L-U. And so people literally engage with you live online on your website. And when you use that on your webinar registration page, you will see the number of registrations just going up off the scale because people want to ask you questions. Even though you put all the great information, people still want to ask questions as well. And I do it on my own website as well. And you can see the chatbot. And this isn't a bot. This isn't a piece of artificial intelligence. This is real people answering the questions. So to wrap up, the benefits to financial advisors doing webinars are like no other marketing tool that I've ever come across. Yes, I know that referrals are great, but we have problems potentially with referrals. Seminars are great as well, but we can't do them anymore. People have become much more used to using the internet, Zoom meetings. Your clients have too. So let's use that medium that everyone's getting used to now to communicate our value, to to communicate our expertise and to offer the help that we know our clients actually want.
Thanks, Phil. And Jez, what Phil's just described there in terms of the what and the how of setting up a webinar. I remember when I did my first webinar presentation, I'm somebody used to doing speaking to live audiences. I thought it was going to be a cinch, and I did all of that great planning and thinking that Phil's just described. And within 5 minutes of talking on my first webinar, I just crumbled. I was talking to myself. I became very aware of that. Can you start to take us through some of the steps of how you go about creating this engagement, this experience that you mentioned earlier when you're talking virtually rather than in a room full of people?
Certainly, and I empathise entirely, Stuart. It's that strange sensation, isn't it? We're all used to running meetings and delivering presentations, and we're used to having that feedback from the audience, real visceral feedback. But suddenly it's gone. It's just you and a void and an empty space and no feedback whatsoever. So yes, there are some fundamental techniques and skills that we can put as a layer above our normal presenting skills that can really help. And it picks up on what Phil says. It's about the planning and the preparation. Would you like me to run through some of those skills now?
Yeah, please do. Thanks.
So let's look at a couple of those fundamental skills that can really help us when we're delivering virtually and delivering on screen. So it's 2 minutes to go. 2 minutes before you press that button Now 1.5 minutes before you've started the seminar, started the webinar, or even simply speaking to a couple of clients on screen. 3 questions to ask of yourself at this point. How do I show up on screen? What is the experience for the client the other side of the screen? And then, for heaven's sake, why do we even bother? Why don't we just do everything the way we've done it for years? We know how to do these things. Why bother? Let's look at that last one first. Why bother? You and your clients are surrounded by a transmedia bubble every moment of every day. The minute you open your screens, the minute you turn on your TV, you are surrounded by a professional level of delivery of video, of screen material. Are you like me, that when the adverts come on, actually you'd record it on the box because you just don't want to watch the adverts? But even if you don't want to watch them, they are still there. You and your clients are surrounded by that level of professionalism. So our job, your job, is to at least match that professionalism and, if possible, exceed it. So what can we actually do about it? Let's look at a couple of fundamentals. You're on screen, and maybe you're recording on an iPad or on a laptop, and you're just using that screen to record. What actually happens at that moment? If you've got the 70 people that Phil referred to, it wasn't that great, fantastic, 70 people to look at on screen. But even if you've only got 3, the chances are you are going to want to get their impact. You want to know what their reactions are going to be. And what I do, what we all do, is we do this. We look down at the screen. Because what we want to see is Fred smiling, is Sheila giving us a nod. We want to know that they are reacting with us. And what I've now done, even just for a few seconds, is I've broken that contact. I've broken that engagement. Now, it's almost the complete opposite, isn't it, of meeting people in the room, where socially you would look around, you break eye contact. I would look over to Phil and Stu to make sure they were listening to what I was saying and engage with them. But the minute we do that on screen, we just lost the engagement. So practical tip number 1, make sure you're looking at the camera. Actually, a quick question for you. Do you actually know where the camera is on your laptop? Put your thumb up and press the button. No, I'm only teasing. But you'd be surprised how many thumbs then wander trying to find where the camera is. Put that in a practical scenario as well. When someone takes a snap, a family snap, when you're out in the days when you could, when you're out in the wilds and enjoying a nice family day, and someone takes a picture on a mobile camera, you look at the screen afterwards, and most of the eyes are just slightly disengaged because they've been looking at the black bit of the camera rather than the camera point itself. And there's perhaps just one person, little Freddie, who's been wise enough to look straight at the camera, and his eyes are engaging with you. So it sounds really fundamental, doesn't it? But just remember to look at the camera, because that is what your clients are going to be engaged with. And a practical suggestion, again, just get a little post-it note, draw a smiley face on it, and stick it up there. So you always know where it is, and you get used to actually engaging with it. Let's look at something else. Here's a little poll for you. When you start to speak, when you open up the screen to begin to record, do you A, just press the button and start? Do you B, have a good cough and a splutter beforehand and have a glass of water ready? Or do you do 10 minutes of voice warm-up exercises before you actually start? Now, we'll come back to the detail of that later, but let's explain why this is so important. The first thing your client sees is you. But the first thing that enters the room is your voice. Now, there's a fundamental human action that we take that can really help with the engagement. You might notice Phil doing it quite frequently, actually, because he's a very experienced presenter. And every now and then on screen, Phil just gave a little smile. He just broke into a grin. Did you not find that when that happened, you automatically gave a little smile back again? It's an instinctive human reaction from your evolution. A smile actually means, okay, you might not be from my tribe, but I'm not going to slaughter you right at that moment. You are actually welcome, and I'm going to engage with you. In today's sophisticated times, when your client walks into the room in old-fashioned times, you gave them a great big grin as you walked in. But what is your facial expression if it's, say, a 6:30 a.m. session that you've agreed to do for a client on the other side of the world? Is it the 6:30, I haven't had my coffee in the morning face yet with a face that matches? Or is it the warm, beaming smile that greets them? There's another reason behind smiling that you may not appreciate. If any of you, like me, are mad, passionate choral singers, your MD will always be saying, oh, for heaven's sake, smile. A, because they want the audience to be happy, but B, when you smile, it actually lifts the soft palate at the back of your throat. The airflow changes across your soft palate, and it changes the sound of your voice from a 6:30 in the morning, I've not had my first cup of coffee voice, into a warm, engaging voice that people actually want to listen to. And every time that Phil smiled, we smiled back and we heard that slightly richer, slightly more mellifluous voice, the sort of voice that engages with the client and the client wants to hear it. So look at the camera and remember to smile, and you've probably just done more than your colleagues who just pressed the button and opened up the screen and started. But what about the preparation of the background for when you're actually presenting? Here's another poll for you. Do you, when you're starting the session, when you're about to be recording something for yourself, do you A, just press the button and start? Do you B, start, but before then, I've checked the tech, I've made sure I've got some reasonable camera, I've got the lighting changed from the little standard lamp, I've actually got a bit of decent lighting around me? Or do you C, do all the above, make sure you've got some reasonable tech, and it's not expensive these days, just as Phil was saying that some of the apps and the products you can get to put together webinars and seminars is not expensive. The products that you need to light yourself and look good are not expensive either. Or C, do you also check the background of the room that you're in? What is in sight when your client the other side of the screen is watching you and listening to your professional pearls of wisdom? Are they being received gratefully and enjoyed, or are they just being scattered on the surface because actually there's something distracting in the background behind you? That shopping basket that someone's left from the day before, the bicycle that one of your youngsters left in the background. What is in the background that your clients are going to see? Just to demonstrate that, I've got a little friend that I bring with me quite frequently because I use him for some totally different things. But this is a leftover from when my kids were young. And I love him to bits. He's probably the most adorable orangutan that you've ever met. And if you're going, at the moment, then so am I. But should this be part of my professional delivery? Is it on the mantelpiece behind me when I'm talking? And is it distracting the client? So when you're looking to put the session together, what is your preparation for that event? The way you look at the camera, the way you use your voice, and the scenery behind you to create the professional image that you want to deliver. And here's a couple of things to potentially avoid. One, I call it the Robert Peston effect, and I hope he doesn't take offence for that. But if we go back to the Prime Minister's question times, way back at the beginning of lockdown, I think he must have had a camera on his laptop that was quite close to the corner, and he leant over into the camera, and what you actually got, and I won't demonstrate this for you, but what you actually got was a close view up his nose of his nostril. What do you want your client to see when they open up the screen? A professional image or your nose hairs as you adjust the laptop and adjust the camera? Be careful of what they're seeing. And also, how do you set up and prepare the camera, the setup, where everything is when you start? What is the first thing that people are going to see? Here's a thought for you. How often have you've been in the car to go to do the weekly shopping? You get to the traffic lights and you stop, and the traffic stopped the other side, and you look over and it's usually a Nissan Micra with a nonagenarian driving it. But what you actually see, or what you don't see for a moment or two, is just an empty amount of space. And then what actually happens is a strange little hat appears just over the steering wheel, and you suddenly realise that yes, there is someone driving that car after all. When you set up the camera to be recorded, have you actually set it up right in the first place? Or is it one where you're adjusting as you go, ready to start? What is the first thing that people see? So let's summarise that section. It's about that first impression on screen, because your clients are first of all going to see you. The first thing that enters the room is the voice, and then they're going to see the background. So a last practical tip: before you actually press the record button, leave the spot where you're going to be standing to do the recording. Go and stand the other side of the desk or the other side of the room and have a look. Have a look at the background, have a look at what's in it, what is the image that you want to create. And then add to that, open up your platform, open up your camera, open up your screen before you're due to go live, and just check what is in the background behind you, what is the image you're going to create when the clients first of all see you on screen. Put those together and you've just created a professional package of tips and techniques that are going to make you appear more professional and more engaging when you appear on screen.
And Jez, just want to pick up on something you mentioned there, and you referenced what Phil was saying earlier about the technology and how that's really affordable now. And I really like the point you were making there about the importance of setting up, the lighting, just checking around your environment, or stepping behind the camera to see what your audience is going to see. What other sort of preparation and steps can somebody take to get themselves ready before they hit that record button?
Well, preparation is absolutely key. I quite agree, Stuart. And actually, the risk is we focus all on tech, don't we? Because don't we all just have a nice bit of fancy tech? We want to change our lighting. We want the latest webcam. We're all waiting for the Black Fridays to get the best deals. We can focus on tech till the cows come home. But what about the underlying skills of delivery? So preparation. Many, many years ago, in fact, it was 1979, when I was a young man in the bank, because I was on my way to become a bank manager in later years, and the personnel manager of Epsom area office, Miss Wilson, who I'll never forget. Miss Wilson was about 2 foot high, but had the authority of the Almighty. You did not cross Miss Wilson. She stopped me in the corridor one day and said, "Mr. Ray, you want to be a manager?" "Yes, ma'am." "You will join the British Junior Chamber of Commerce?" "Yes, ma'am." So I joined the British Junior Chamber of Commerce. And 30 seconds after I was in, Jez, we take part in public speaking competitions. You're going for the training. So at a tender age in my early 20s, in the late 70s, I was thrown into public speaking competitions at a national level. One of the maxims we worked to was that every minute of the speech, you did a week's worth of preparation. So a 7-minute competition speech was 2 months of preparation. Okay, we're going back to the days before PCs, the day before internet. All you had was a telephone and a typewriter. Life was a bit slower. We haven't got the time these days, but preparation is key. What else can you do to prepare yourself to be ready to deliver on screen? Let's look at some physical things that you can do. Breathing, first of all. You breathe, I breathe, we all breathe. Of course, having just mentioned it, I've now made you conscious, I'm breathing. Now put yourself into that 2 minutes again before you wake up the screen. How are you breathing? The chances are, if the nerves are rising, you're probably doing the "I've just run up the stairs" sort of breathing, because you're just trying to get ready. And the risk is that, and I'm exaggerating slightly for the point, but the risk is that as you start to present, your breath will take over you, your breathing will be in control, and you'll just be getting the stuff out in gasps. Whereas what we want to do is to deliver with authority and confidence. So breathe and use techniques for breathing before you even start the presentation. Here's a couple of practical tips for you. Make sure that you stand nice and securely. Put your hand about where your belt buckle would be if you're wearing, say, a pair of jeans. Breathe in deeply, and as you breathe in, contrary though it may seem, try and force that belt buckle out. So we'll do it all together. Do it with me. 1, 2, 3, breathe in, and breathe out again. And once again, hand where your belt buckle is, we'll breathe in and push that belt buckle out. 1, 2, 3, breathe in, and breathe out again. How are you feeling now after just 2 breaths? Imagine how that will help you in your preparation for delivery. And the last tip on breathing, before you start, even if you're sitting down in the chair, lift your shoulders up and let your chest come out in the way it does when you lift your shoulders right up. Now drop your shoulders, but keep your chest where it is. And you are now physically in a position where you can't do fast panic breathing because you are comfortably placed to breathe properly. So breathing before you start can really, really help with your professionalism, with your authority, and your engagement with your client. So breathing. I'm also going to mention smiling again, because it is that fundamental human engagement. Remember to smile, because your audience will smile with you, your voice will change, it will be slightly richer, slightly more engaging, and you've helped to get your audience on side. So breathing before you start, smiling when you're on screen. Let me throw posture into that as well. Back in the days of yore, when you used to present in a room to people, would you walk up to the front of the room, to the applause of the assembled congregation waiting for you, walk up to the stage and sit down slumped in a comfy armchair to present and deliver? Of course you wouldn't. Because you wanted to be engaged, you wanted to be positive, you wanted to be filling the stage with your persona, you wanted to be authoritative. And yet when we present virtually, we make it all nice and comfy, don't we? We sit at the desk, we have a comfy chair behind us, and we relax and we chill. So if you have to be sitting, make sure that you are sitting square into the chair, chest in a position where you can breathe properly and where you can deliver with authority. But even better, stand. Even if you put the camera and the laptop on a pile of old cornflake boxes, get it in a position where you can stand to deliver your presentation, stand to deliver that seminar that Phil guided you through on how to put together. Add an extra 50 to 80% of energy simply by standing. It will help. And a last physical technique to help you engage with your client in the way that you use your speech pattern. Silence is one of the most powerful tools that you have as a speaker. Think of it in terms of the speaking speeds when people are just chatting. If you're chatting comfortably and in a nice, pleasant conversation, you're probably talking 140, 150 words a minute. If you're getting really excited because it's an amazing story, then you're probably talking about 200 words a minute. But as a human being, you have the ability to absorb words at 300 to 500 words a minute. So even when you are delivering those incredible, knowledgeable pearls of wisdom to your adoring audience, they're actually off thinking, what's in the fridge for tea? What have I got to do this afternoon? Did I inject a cat? And there's another story there. Your audience will disappear into their own minds if you are just delivering a constant diatribe of words that just pours out non-stop and doesn't give them a chance to pick up what you're saying. Using silence as a tool, putting pauses in at the right moment, enables your audience to hear what you're saying, to process what you're saying, and be ready for the next point. And remember, when you are presenting, you are in a different time zone to your audience. You are pumped up with adrenaline. You're fueled up. You're ready to go. This is the seminar of your life that you're going to deliver. And your audience are chilled. They're relaxed. They've got a cup of coffee. They're listening quite happily. Just to illustrate that, I'll ask a question, and I hope the answer to this is no. But have you ever been the driver in a relatively serious car or motorbike crash? I sincerely hope it's no. I've had both, but I'll just mention the motorbike one because it was the most dramatic. I used to commute to the City of London on a motorbike, and it was joy. I ditched 2 hours, 20 minutes commute each way for an hour and a half on the motorbike. It was fun. Until one day, coming home down the A3, and a lorry pulls out, the side turning, the driver has not seen me, and I am 3 seconds from slamming into the side of that lorry. 3 seconds. The bike's doing all it can. ABS is full on, it's doing its best to stop. There's nothing I can do to prevent myself slamming into the side of that lorry. But the brain goes, whew, why don't you put the kettle on? Why don't you make a cup of tea? Let it brew, drink it slowly. Because the adrenaline rush puts me as the driver of that motorbike and you as the presenter of your seminar in a different time zone to your audience. So in your practice and in your rehearsal, get used to using silence as a tool and a technique. Let's segue also into engagement and actually the use of this incredible instrument here, your voice. What tones do you deliver? What message are you trying to say? How is your audience picking up on the message that you are delivering? Is it a case that you're just delivering one whole pile of information in a monotone voice that just doesn't vary at all? And I'm sure you, as well as I, have witnessed so many seminars over the years where that happens. Put yourself in the pub with your friends, at lunch with your family at Christmas. You've got a story to tell. You are going to be really telling it in a story voice. Or you've got an authoritative statement to make. You are going to be using an authority voice to make that statement. Or there's something really personal. There's something with a touch of heartfelt tragedy to it. You would automatically be using a heartfelt voice to get that across. Or you're finishing the meeting. How often have you been at meetings where people finish like this and it comes to an end and you're not sure if it's finished or if you should click off and go and make a cup of tea? Whereas if it's finished with an authority end, if it concludes beautifully, you know it has finished with aplomb and authority. So think of the voice tones that you are using. What is the message that you want your audience to receive? And what voice tone can you deliver? Story, authority, heart story, or finishing with aplomb. And each of those are physical techniques that we can use, which leads on neatly to scripting what you are going to say. Scripting may mean one of many things to you. It could be you use mind maps. It could be like me, you're old-fashioned, you write it all out and then you turn it onto index cards and you put a treasury tag through it because you're used to the old days of presenting and not wanting to drop on the floor. It might mean something totally different, but whatever you use to put your notes from preparation together, try putting in the margins what you intend to do and what message you intend to deliver and what voice you could use to get that message across more effectively. And then rehearse it. I come back to my public speaking competitions in the late 1970s. 2 months of rehearsal for a 7-minute speech. How much rehearsal and preparation are you going to put into a webinar, a seminar, a session that's going to help and build your business? And let's finish with a couple of techniques or a couple of ideas that can help you in that preparation. Let's come back to this instrument, this wonderful little instrument here, your voice. So actually, I'll ask Phil and Stuart, what were your favourite sports when you were young and fit? You are young and fit, of course you are. So what are your favourite sports, or what were your favourite sports in days of yore?
I've got to say golf.
Golf for you, okay.
I watched a lot of snooker when I was younger, so
Oh, sedentary people. Any running, any football in those days?
A little bit of cross country.
Little cross country?
yeah, football, yeah.
Football, yeah. So for those sort of situations, if it was a cold winter's morning and Stu went out onto the football field and just went hell for leather for the game of his life with no warm-ups and no stretching and no preparation, what would be the answer? Well, we know what the answer would be. You'd be in physio for 2 weeks, wouldn't you? And that's what happens physically. And yet, we expect this incredible, delicate little instrument here to function at its best with no preparation at 9:30 on a cold winter's morning. And then we wonder why 5 minutes in it's, excuse me, frog in my throat, must go and grab a glass of water. For the sake of your audience and for the sake of you, please prepare your voice. We could actually work together on a whole series of voice exercises right now, but I'll give you just one to take away. Before you do anything, just do a sort of wee sound up and down. And I'm going to be really stupid here, but I promise you on any exercise, my promise is I'm your embarrassment sponge. I will take all the embarrassment out the room before you do it. So the exercise I'm going to ask you to do is to go, and now I can see you laughing because yes, I look a bit of a twerp, but actually that is a simple exercise that will help stretch your voice out. So if you do nothing else, go into the loos where no one can hear you and just stretch your voice out. Sing a nursery song to yourself. And we can come back to things like the Shakespeare insult kit at another time. So to summarize this section, it's about the preparation. It's about getting the voice in the right place. It's about using the voice tones to match the message. It's about using the right sort of stance and physicality to help create the atmosphere to make you a professional presenter and lift the game of your webinar, of your session by an exponential amount. So please prepare before you start.
I think, Jess, one of the things I wanted to pick up on there was I just wholeheartedly agree with everything you just said in terms of the preparation of the voice and how important that is in terms of the engagement with the audience. Because go back to the thing I said, what I mentioned right at the beginning of your session, the very first webinar I did, somebody who I regarded myself as a pretty good presenter, or certainly somebody that was used to that kind of thing, but the webinar style of presenting was very different, and it took a while to get into that. And I've noticed that people that are very good on their feet in front of a live audience aren't so good when they're talking to a laptop, and they don't have the whites of the people's eyes. So everything you just said there about the cadence of your voice, the use of silences, is such a powerful tool. It's so important, isn't it, when you're not, even more so perhaps when you're talking to people virtually and they're not sat just a few feet away from you on a chair and you can look in the whites of their eyes.
You are so right. It's that void, isn't it? It's just you talking to a screen and there's nobody physically there to get the feedback from. So having dealt with the physical preparation and getting yourself ready, it's now about helping yourself prepare for an audience where you have effectively got to create the situation where, as best you can, you know what the impact of your words is going to have, you know the shape of those words, and you can anticipate as best as you can how the audience reaction is going to be. And that will be our next section.
So bearing that in mind then, Jess, how does an advisor get inside the mind of their virtual audience? If they're not sat right in front of them, being able to look in the whites of their eyes, how do they get inside the client's head to make to get that engagement piece across?
And wouldn't that be amazing if we could get inside our clients' heads? I spent many years as a bank manager trying to do exactly that, but often it was a 3-year sales cycle to get to understand them and to know them before we could understand what they wanted. But that's a very key point. How can you get inside your client's head in as much that you can perhaps create things in a way that you have an idea of what the reaction is going to be when they hear it? So let's look at a couple of, again, techniques that can really help. Let's break it down actually to storytelling. So here's a scenario. You've gone to a cafe by the beach for a lovely cup of tea or coffee. It's a beautiful day, and there are some not the aggressive seagulls, but some nice little birds that have come tweeting round your desk, tweeting round the table, and what you want to do is just feed them a crumb or two. Would you actually pick up a baguette and hurl it at them and expect them to digest it in one go? Of course you wouldn't. You would do exactly what I was saying. You'd just feed them a few little crumbs. You'd help them in their digestion. And yet the temptation for us when we're putting together a webinar, a seminar, is that we hurl this great pile of information at the client all in one go. So think of it from your client's perspective. If you can breadcrumb the information, if you can feed it in little snippets and intersperse with stories, you can really help achieve that result because they can take it in manageable chunks. Add to that a nested loop technique, and actually Phil does these beautifully because he's so experienced at doing it. He will indicate something and say, I'll come back to that a bit later. And then he comes back and finishes off the story. So it could be, right, we need to look at inheritance tax provision and we need to look at capital gains tax. Let's come back to that as part of the overall planning, whilst you go on to some other information. So that when you come back to those points, you finish off the story in reverse order to the way you started them. And you've just actually, without realizing it maybe, what you've done is a nested loop technique in storytelling that helps the client pick up the information. So when you're planning what you're going to say in your session, just think of breadcrumbing, feeding bits of information in little snippets, and actually nested loops, giving a hint of information that you're going to follow up on, and then of course making sure that you do to complete the information. Because it's stories that's so important. Let me touch on stories for a minute. And here I have a favourite prop of mine. I call him Eric because my granddad was called Eric. And this is the sort of thing that you see in toolboxes from, probably half a century ago. Now, of course, where I live in Dorking, there is an ironmonger's called Cummings where you can actually still buy these now. So, we're really up with the times in Dorking. But on this wonderful instrument, which to me is a yardstick because I'm pre-decimal, but to you will probably be a metre stick. If this represents the amount of time that as human beings we've been able to tell stories, a good couple of 100,000 years, then the amount of time that we've been able to communicate those stories by writing ancient scriptures in papyrus in the desert is where this tiny little elastic band is on the end of the metre stick. The amount of time that we've been able to communicate by anything on screen, even email, is so far off the end of this scale, there is not an elastic band small enough to fit. So as human beings, through your evolution, the amount of time you've survived on stories told verbally is this, compared with the tiniest bit at the end of this. Stories are what held you together and what helped you survive. Your ancestors in times that are gone by told stories to their youngsters about the red berries and the blueberries. If you ate one, you lived. If you ate the other one, then just like Thelma in the cave next door, you died. So as a species, we have survived on stories. Your parents would have told you stories about the kettle and about the plug. There'll be things you remember from your childhood that you have never forgotten because they are a story. So when we're communicating with clients, they will not remember, or very rarely remember, facts and figures unless it was just one big one that stuck with them. What they remember is the stories that you tell them around that information. So create the story, feed it out in little bits and pieces, use nested loop techniques, and you've now just helped your audience understand what you were saying in a manner that they have evolved through hundreds of thousands of years to understand. Stories. And let's finish this session by thinking about what is your competition. And here I'm not talking about the competition of your competitors in your field. I'm not talking about the competition in the financial services industry. I'm talking about the competition for you at that moment on screen. What else is going on around them that could take their attention away? Are they on their phone? You can tell, can't you? When someone's on a session with you on screen, you can tell by the eyes that when the eyes start doing this, you know that they just started answering emails instead of listening to you. Are they looking at Facebook on a split screen at the same time? What is going on around them in the building or outside? What is your competition for that session that you are trying to deliver? Everything that we've covered in these sessions have been about engagement, because you're never going to eliminate entirely. There's always going to be an important email that someone has to deal with. There's always going to be a knock at the door because Amazon has just delivered another parcel. But if we can engage with our clients and use techniques that can help with that engagement, we've got a better chance of retaining them, at least in terms of engagement with us on screen. And we've got a better chance of being remembered as the advisor that was warm, engaging, and delivered in a style that I liked and wanted to listen to. So we come back to the big word that sets it all. It is engagement, engagement, engagement.
Thanks, Jess. I hope you enjoyed those presentations. Certainly, I've learned a lot from today, scribbled down lots of notes, and I wanted to pick up on some of those points actually as a final summary before we leave it there. Phil, if I can turn to you first. I think that the things that kind of stood out for me, and I've underlined them, double underlined them here. Webinars, the single biggest generator of leads, and I think you said they always have been, always will be. Just underlines for me, quite literally, how important this form of marketing is. And that bit you talked about adding to an advisor's value ladder, and I suspect some of people watching today might not have thought about that before, their own value ladder. As you said, not many advisors have them, but they should be thinking about that, and webinars as part of that process. I guess from your perspective, this is absolutely a critical part of an advisor's armoury, not just because we're living in this COVID, socially distant world, but regardless of that, just because it's such a powerful lead generation tool, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I go back to my little red book from Tankery Gordon's. Educational marketing is really powerful, and we're exposed to marketing messages. I don't know what the number is, but it must be thousands of marketing messages wherever we go, whatever we're doing, and this is just constantly coming at us. And some of it hits home, some of it goes straight over our head. I would imagine most of it goes straight over our head. But financial advice, whether we're talking about financial planning, inheritance tax planning, arranging a mortgage, something like that, is complicated. And the simple fact of the matter is people want and, dare I say, need the education on it. And consumers should not be getting their personal finance education from journalists. They should be getting it from experts like financial advisors. They're the people they should be talking to. They know they need the help, they know they need the advice. Sometimes they just need reassuring that they're on the right track, and they should be going to financial advisors. So a financial advisor can kill several birds with one stone. They can educate and inform, but attract at the same time. And in the process, I mean, I don't think that the financial advice world has done a particularly good job at promoting what it does over many, many years. And here is a great way to build that trust, get to know people. And I think, you know, listening to what Jez was saying, it's all about stories, it's all about people. Yes, a financial advisor may well have the expertise, but we need to communicate that in a nice human way. And I can't think of a better way of doing it than in a either in-person or online educational thing that somebody can listen to at their own speed, at their leisure, and it's really easy to do. This is the beauty of it, and it ticks all those boxes in terms of does it work? Yes. Is it scalable? Yes. Do you get predictable results? Yes. It just goes on and on. It ticks every box.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jez, that point there, I mean, that really resonated with me. And that final prop, the yardstick. I'm a bit old school myself. I'm a child of the 70s. I think my granddad had one of those. But that idea of the way in which we've been telling stories for millennia, and it's only relatively recently we've been writing them down. But the power of telling a story, and whether you're delivering it to a live audience and they're sat in front of you, or whether you're delivering it over a laptop or an iPad, the power of the story, the engagement that you do, and the way in which you get that engagement through the delivery, the pace and tone of your voice, it's such a powerful tool you've got at your disposal, isn't it? I mean, it's such an amazing marketing tool, this thing that we've got, given the right preparation, as you said earlier.
And isn't that an interesting point? Think of your voice as a marketing tool. When have we thought that? But you are so right. We're in a world of facts and figures, aren't we? It's about what's the return. It's about filling in the reports. It's about bullet points. It's about information. But we are not programmed as human beings to remember bullet points and facts and figures. We're programmed to remember that our mum told us, don't touch that plug because it will kill you. It's the stuff that helped us survive as an individual and as a species is how we're wired to remember information. I think a challenge for us when we're in the financial services world is that we think of it in terms of numbers and delivery. And perhaps it's a concern that, can I do that? I'm used to numbers. I'm used to bullet points. Can I step into a slightly different world? But all you're doing is stepping into the world that you grew up in. So just put the story around it. Think of an anecdote that relates to that in order to arrive at the fact, and your client will probably remember it better. And yes, come back to your point. Absolutely agree. This is a marketing tool. Why not invest in it in terms of time and preparation in the same way that you would research the tools that Phil told you to go and look up online to use in your business?
Absolutely. Phil, Jez, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you've enjoyed watching this program today and learning more about the power of live marketing, especially webinar marketing for your own marketing purposes and for lead generation purposes. We'll be hearing more from Phil and Jez in the future. I know you've always enjoyed listening to what these guys have to say. They certainly are experts in their field. But for now, thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you on the next event.